After the NDA government told the Rajya Sabha that the Election Commission had voiced no opposition whatsoever to the electoral bond scheme that was introduced in 2017, a letter now from the Election Commission from 2017 has surfaced. The Election Commission's view is in stark contrast to what the government said in Parliament. Now, the letter from 2017 says the Election Commission had red flagged the plan and that makes the election donation process, they say, opaque once again. The Election Commission had called for the introduction of electoral bonds. They called them a retrograde step and called for it to be withdrawn immediately. Right. So this is in fact the stand that's now been taken by the Election Commission. So this letter from 2017, in fact, is in stark contrast to what the government said in Parliament just a few days ago. Pon Radhakrishnan responding to a TMC MP, Nadimul Haq, in fact, explaining that there was no concern that was raised by the Election Commission, in fact, at the time that this is in fact introduced. But just a brief reading of that letter from the Election Commission that was written to the Law Ministry at the time clearly says a few things, which is, number one, they wanted this to be withdrawn. That they thought this was a retrograde step, and basically taking the entire process backwards, and once again red flagging the fact that this would once again leave political parties open to receiving donations in black money. Okay, I've got Mr. Sanjay Jha of the Congress Party joining us now on the phone line with his comments on this story. Thanks so much for speaking to us, Sanjay. This is a question that we will have to, of course, ask, because you've got two versions here. One is the version of the government in Parliament. They've said that the Election Commission had no problem whatsoever, but a letter from 2017, which I'm sure you must have read, clearly says otherwise and uses some very stark language.
Narendra Modi's government is creating privilege motions against it. It's lying. It's lied to the Supreme Court. It's lied to Parliament. And, isn't it interesting that Arun Jaitley starts an electoral bond scheme where the monies who are going to be donated to a political party, in this case the BJP, which is getting all the money, you don't have to disclose your name. You have to be anonymous. Why? Why? Is this how you basically laundered black money? And, what is intriguing is the fact that the government has lied. I mean, 95% of the money raised to electoral bonds have gone to the Bharatiya Janata Party. Think about it. And the government does not want to tell you. The party does not want to disclose who has donated the money. What is the source of the money? Even the companies or the trusts that donated don't have to give specific details. So this, I think, is a huge scam. It's a massive scam. And if the Election Commission letter is already there, which says that it has to be withdrawn, how has the government lied in Parliament? I think this is like how they have lied to the Supreme Court, they have lied to Parliament. I mean, this is a deliberate, deceptive act. And I think condemnation will not be enough. I think all opposition parties are going to come together and we will take appropriate action.
Right, and Sanjay, what we must also point out is two different things. One, of course, is if one makes a particular statement in public, whether in the media or otherwise, that comment, of course, while if that comment is false or proven to be false, of course, those questions will be asked. But there's a difference with saying something that would seem like an untruth in Parliament when the Election Commission clearly said otherwise in that letter to the Law Ministry.
Absolutely. Let me tell you, the Parliament is sacrosanct. The Parliament is the cornerstone of our democracy. The Parliament represents the will of the people. And the Parliament is being misled by the government of this country. They are lying. That means the government of Narendra Modi is lied to the people of India. Why? And shouldn't there be consequences? Shouldn't somebody resign? I mean, doesn't this government have any kind of shame and decency? I mean, can you imagine you're talking of political funding? Already people are very concerned that political parties are corrupt, especially after Rafale. And we know how corrupt the Rafale deal is. And here is a government that is in daylight misleading the people of India, misleading Parliament on electoral bonds. And we always said there is something very fishy, wishy-washy here. And the government has failed the test. And there must be consequences. Well, I'm glad you're raising the point that this is not enough. I think there should be consequences for misleading Parliament, and we will take this up very, very seriously.
Right, Sanjay Jha of the Congress Party. Thanks so much for joining us here on the broadcast. So this is the story we're putting out. Two different versions, one from the Election Commission in 2017 and the other from the government in 2018. They say two very different things. What is a fact, it has now been proven through this letter, is that the Election Commission raised this issue way back in 2017 in February. In fact, when they put out that letter, they said in as many words that this was a retrograde step and that this must be withdrawn immediately. Thanks, Sanjay Jha, for joining us. Right, and if one goes through this letter, there are a number of things that become absolutely clear. The concerns of the Election Commission were not just the fact that this was a retrograde step, but also that it made this entire process opaque once again. And to read some of what is in this letter that was written to the Law Ministry, let's go to my colleague Tanuma Biswas, who joins us in the Mumbai newsroom with a copy of that letter. Tanuma, there's a lot to take away from that, so just help us read through some of that and understand what it actually means for the Election Commission and for this move that, let's be honest, had raised quite a few eyebrows at the time.
That's right. Viren, firstly, let me tell you that this letter, if I can just draw your attention over here, we have pulled it up over here for the viewers. So the letter is dated 26th of May last year, and this has been addressed to the Secretary of the Legislative Department, Ministry of Law and Justice. If we can just go to the second page of the letter, and I will point out the operative part to you. Right here, as you can see, that over here, the Election Commission essentially said that the contributions received through electoral bonds are not reported, and on perusal of contribution reports of political parties, it cannot be ascertained. Over here, it mentions that political parties have taken any donation in violations of certain sections of the Representation of People Act, which prohibits political parties from taking donations from government companies and foreign sources. So essentially, this particular paragraph over here points out the problem areas with the electoral bonds. Also, the letter goes on to say that an amendment had been made saying that the donations should not exceed 2,000 rupees. However, the limit for receipt of anonymous donations by political parties still remains at 20,000 in Section 29C of the RP Act. And even it talked about the Companies Act of 2013, saying that certain amendments have been proposed in these sections, but also says that this opens up the possibility of shell companies being set for the sole purpose of making donation to political parties. So essentially several points in this, and if we can go to the third page of this letter, it ends by saying that the Commission had expressed apprehensions earlier about the process of electoral bonds, that it could increase the use of black money for political funding through shell companies. But it says that the Commission is of the view that the earlier provision, which had ensured that only profitable companies with proven track records can provide donations to political parties, that can in fact be brought back. So as far as the reply in the Parliament is concerned of the government, essentially claiming that there had been no concerns raised by the Election Commission as far as electoral bonds are concerned. That seems to be contradicted by this letter that we have access to, the copy of this letter, which had been marked to the Secretary of Legislative Department in the Ministry of Law and Justice and dated a year back in 26th May 2017. So is this something that the government is taking into account when it replies in Parliament?
That's the question that's being asked. Thanks, Tanuma, for joining us. So we continue our focus on that story and many others. But let's tell our viewers as well that in the reply to the Rajya Sabha, the Union Minister, Pon Radhakrishnan, said bonds worth 1,056.73 crore were purchased by the end of the 6th phase of sale in November. Of these, parties have so far collected 1,046 crores through this scheme.